This elderly man risked his life to save a drowning wolf, and how the wolf later repaid him is astonishing. Every winter, Henry told himself he was getting too old to live in the remote wilderness, yet he loved the rugged life too much to leave it behind. As the years passed, the cold seemed to bite harder, cutting through even the thickest layers of clothing. Fishing in the frozen lake wasn't easy on his aging bones, but Henry knew he had to keep his food supplies up. Winter's grip would soon tighten, and opportunities to catch fish would become rare. So, he persevered, despite the aches that grew more intense each season. However, an unexpected event soon made him grateful he had chosen to stay. One day, as he was fishing by the lake, Henry noticed a wolf approaching the water's edge. From a safe distance, he observed the magnificent animal. It was a large, young wolf, probably inexperienced but curious. The wolf cautiously edged closer to the lake, clearly thirsty, though the frozen shoreline made it difficult to reach the water. Finally, the wolf stepped onto the ice, attempting to access the open water. Henry, familiar with the signs of dangerous ice, realized this could end badly. The wolf, oblivious to the risk, kept walking until he was too far from the shore to return easily. The ice suddenly began to crack, and with a harsh splash, the wolf fell into the frigid lake. A sheet of ice broke off from the main surface, drifting away with the wolf clinging to it. He was soaked, shivering, and clearly in shock, unable to swim back to shore. His claws scraped at the ice, his head bobbing up and down as he struggled to stay above the water. The young wolf, with no experience in this kind of danger, was in a desperate situation, freezing and nearly drowning. Henry's heart raced as he assessed the situation. He knew that if he did nothing, the wolf would succumb to the freezing water. The moment Henry saw the wolf fall into the icy lake, he abandoned his fishing gear and sprang into action. Grabbing some tools he thought might help, he rushed toward the water's edge, aware that no warm-blooded animal could survive those frigid depths for long. Diving in himself would be deadly, so he needed another plan fast. The ice floe, with the wolf clinging to it, was drifting further from shore. Henry could see the wolf's fur stiffening as it froze, and he knew the animal had little time left. Luckily, Henry had recently brought along something new, a tool that could make a difference in this critical moment. Henry's son had gifted him a small spear gun to assist in fishing, out of concern for his father's well-being in the wilderness. While Henry's family wished he'd move closer to them in the city, they supported his independent life by sending him useful gear. The spear gun, intended for fishing, was now the only chance to save the wolf. Aiming carefully, Henry fired the spear just beyond the wolf's ice floe, hoping not to startle the animal further. But as the spear lodged in the ice, Henry noticed the wolf barely clinging on, its head dipping lower with each passing second. The young animal was entering shock, its strength fading fast. Gripping the rope attached to the spear, Henry began to pull the ice floe toward the shore, cautiously reeling it in to avoid jarring the wolf or worsening its condition. He worked slowly, knowing that a sudden tug could cause the wolf to slip back into the water or injure itself further. Despite the biting cold, Henry's own tension was palpable, beads of sweat trickling down his neck as he focused on each careful pull. He could feel the weight of the animal, its struggle to hold on, and the urgency to reach the shore before it was too late. With each steady pull, the floe came closer to safety and Henry's heart raced. The wolf's once majestic coat, now soaked and frozen, was a stark reminder of how close this creature had come to an untimely end. Finally, as the floe neared the shore, Henry prepared himself to help the wolf out of the water, knowing that even then, its survival wasn't certain. The ice floe drifted close to shore, but a thick layer of ice prevented it from reaching solid ground. The wolf sat motionless on the edge of the floe, likely too frozen to move. Henry knew he'd have to reach the animal himself, but he also knew the ice was thin. Moving with caution, he tied the spear gun's rope around his waist and secured it to a nearby tree. Then, spreading his weight as evenly as he could, he carefully crawled across the cracking ice. Each subtle creak sent his heart pounding, but he pressed on. When he reached the wolf, he braced himself for aggression. But the wolf didn't flinch or growl. Instead, he looked up at Henry with weary eyes as if silently pleading for help. Determined, Henry leaned closer, realizing that the wolf's paws were frozen to the ice. The poor creature had no chance of freeing himself even if he tried. Henry quickly tied a section of rope around the wolf's torso to secure him, then reached into the icy water to begin chipping away at the ice with his utility knife. The frigid water seared his hands, and he winced, realizing the pain this animal must have endured. Bit by bit, he chipped until the wolf's paws were finally freed from the flow. With a steady but urgent rhythm, Henry started pulling the wolf back to shore. He couldn't carry the animal outright, so he crawled a few feet, then tugged the wolf forward. The journey was grueling, each movement fraught with the risk of the ice giving way. Henry's heart pounded, and his breath was shallow with each pull, but he pressed on inch by inch until they finally reached the safety of solid ground. Once on shore, Henry gently laid the wolf down, his fur soaked and body trembling with cold. The wolf's eyes moved weakly, and he let out a faint whimper. If not for these signs, Henry might have feared the worst. Quickly, he wrapped his jacket around the animal, offering as much warmth as he could. Then he rushed back to his fishing spot to retrieve his snowmobile, knowing he had to get the wolf to warmth and shelter quickly. It had been one of the most intense moments of Henry's life, testing his resolve and strength. But as he looked back at the wolf wrapped in his jacket, he knew he'd done everything possible to save a life that day. Henry carefully drove back to the wolf, managing to balance the large, shivering animal on his snowmobile. It was a tricky ride, but thankfully, his cabin was nearby, just a few minutes away. Leaving his fishing gear on the snowmobile, Henry carried the wolf inside and set him down near the fireplace. He'd already prepared the fire in anticipation of his own return, hoping to warm up quickly, though he'd never expected to be bringing a wolf home with him. As the fire roared to life, the room filled with warmth, but Henry's concern remained fixed on the wolf's frozen paws. He prepared some warm water and gently sponged the animal's feet, melting the last bits of ice until his paws turned pink again. Carefully, Henry rubbed a herbal ointment he'd made onto the wolf's pads, hoping to ease the chill and prevent any lasting damage. After all, it wouldn't matter if the wolf had survived the icy water if he couldn't walk afterward. The wolf, initially tense, now lay quietly, his gaze fixed on Henry, seeming tired yet calm. Henry was cautious. He didn't want to risk a bite for his efforts, but the wolf simply looked weakened, perhaps even grateful. Wanting to help the animal recover his strength, Henry decided he could use a good meal. Stepping outside, Henry retrieved his cooler from the snowmobile and brought in a freshly caught fish. Setting it near the wolf, he watched the animal's initial indifference slowly shift to curiosity as the fish's scent drew him in. At first, the wolf sniffed hesitantly, but soon hunger won over and he began to eat tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Sitting up, the wolf finished the meal, visibly revived. As Henry observed him, he noticed how the wolf's beautiful eyes regained their sparkle, the earlier look of fear gradually replaced by a newfound calm. Those bright eyes, sharp and intense, now seemed to hold a quiet trust. After finishing his dinner, the wolf settled for a nap by the fire, and Henry quietly left the front door slightly open. He then moved to another room, giving the wild animal space. By morning, the wolf had gone. Henry was relieved and grateful that the rescue had gone so smoothly. But he would soon discover that this encounter was just the beginning. A few days later, as Henry went to collect firewood, he spotted a pack of wolves moving in the distance. One young male stopped and turned, meeting his gaze. It was the wolf he had saved, now looking strong and healthy. This unexpected reunion felt like a reward, though it wouldn't be the last time Henry saw his new friend. That spring, Henry's son and his family came to visit. They enjoyed the wilderness, especially Henry's grandson, who loved exploring his grandfather's world. During one ATV ride, they came across a remarkable sight: the wolf and his pack resting under the shade of trees. The wolf Henry had rescued spotted them, lifted his head, and let out a howl as if greeting them. It was a magical moment, one the boy would treasure. But as their holiday drew to a close, a near-tragic event unfolded. On their last day, they decided to go fishing at a nearby river, a peaceful spot surrounded by dense forest. Henry taught his grandson how to fish, and the boy was thrilled to catch his first one, darting up and down the riverbank in excitement. Henry cautioned him not to go too far, but his parents, unfamiliar with the forest's dangers, allowed him a bit of freedom. At one point, Henry briefly stepped away, and when he returned, he noticed his grandson nearly a kilometer downstream, proudly holding up another fish. Just as Henry started to call out, a bear emerged from the woods, drawn by the fish's scent. The bear eyed the boy, seeing both him and the fish as easy targets. The family shouted to distract the bear, but he paid them no mind, focusing instead on the boy. Thinking quickly, the boy tossed his fish aside, hoping it would satisfy the bear. But the fish was small, and after swallowing it, the bear turned back toward the boy, sensing more food. Henry's heart raced with fear. He began running, desperate to protect his grandson, even if it cost him his life. But the distance was too great, and he feared he wouldn't reach him in time. Just as panic took hold, a familiar, powerful howl echoed through the forest. The wolf Henry had saved appeared, sprinting toward the scene with his pack following closely behind. Then suddenly, a wolf came out of the forest too, a very familiar and very large wolf. He ran towards the bear and the boy. The bear did take note of him, and it caught him off guard. The wolf placed himself between the boy and the bear, taking a protective stance. He stood in front of the boy and growled at the bear. The bear tried to step forward, but realizing that the wolf was not backing down, he did. It might have had a different outcome if food was scarce, but that time of year, there was plenty of food around, so it wasn't worth it to risk injury. The bear turned and ran away. The wolf kept on guard until Henry reached them and could pick the boy up. Then the wolf turned and began to leave. Henry had saved his life, and now he repaid him by saving his grandson. They couldn't even think of what would have happened without the wolf's protection. Henry called a thanks to the wolf, who turned and looked at them, and then ran away, probably to join his family. For years, until he moved to live with his son's family, Henry would catch glimpses of the wolf running through the forest. Each sighting reminded him of the extraordinary bond they shared, a bond forged in mutual survival and kindness. Saving the wolf had not only connected their lives, but remarkably ended up saving his grandson's life as well. It all began with a powerful, familiar howl cutting through the forest, jolting Henry from his mounting panic. Emerging from the trees, the wolf Henry had rescued appeared, charging toward the bear and the boy, his pack following closely. The bear, momentarily startled, stopped as the wolf took a protective stance between the boy and the towering threat. Standing firm, the wolf growled deeply, a clear warning for the bear to back off. The bear hesitated, weighing his options against the determined stance of the wolf. Realizing it wasn't worth the risk, he eventually backed down, turning and lumbering back into the woods. The encounter ended without harm, but the intensity of the moment left everyone shaken. The wolf stayed vigilant, watching until the bear disappeared into the forest. Only then did he allow Henry to safely approach and scoop his grandson into his arms. Henry's heart overflowed with gratitude as he looked at the wolf. Calling out a heartfelt thank you, he met the wolf's eyes, sharing a silent exchange that went beyond words. The wolf held his gaze for a beat as if acknowledging the connection they now shared, before quietly slipping back into the trees with his pack. Long after, even when he left his cabin and moved in with his son's family, Henry would often remember that day. Occasionally, he would catch sight of the wolf in the forest, always moving with purpose, free and strong. Each sighting was a reminder of their remarkable bond, a testament to a kindness repaid in a way that had saved his grandson's life. Henry's experience with the wolf became a story passed down through his family, cherished for its reminder of the power of compassion and the unexpected allies that can emerge in moments of crisis. The bond between Henry and the wolf served as a beautiful example of how a single act of bravery and kindness could come full circle in the most meaningful way. It taught Henry, and everyone who heard the story, that good deeds have a way of returning to us, especially when they save those we love most.